I want you to imagine, just for a moment, kind of an impossible scenario. Think about your own life.
Yeah.
You know, your workplace, your friend group, your neighborhood.
Right.
Now, I want you to picture what would happen if a truly, absolutely pure and good person were just suddenly dropped right into the middle of your daily reality.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I don't just mean like a nice person. I mean someone completely devoid of malice, ego, self-interest, or any hidden agendas. Someone who literally cannot comprehend sarcasm or social maneuvering.
Yeah, a truly innocent soul.
Exactly, just parachuted right into the center of our hyper-competitive, deeply flawed, status-obsessed modern society. How would we react to someone like that?
That's a really terrifying thought experiment, honestly.
Right. Would we celebrate them? Or, in our endless scramble for leverage and security, would we completely destroy them?
Because our immediate reflexive instinct is always to say, well, of course we would celebrate them. We value goodness, right?
I would like to think so.
But when you actually analyze the mechanics of human society, the unspoken contracts, the white lies, all the power dynamics, absolute goodness is incredibly disruptive. It actually threatens the very foundation of the rules we all operate by.
It totally does. If someone in your office, say, started giving away their salary to the intern out of pure empathy, or told the absolute unvarnished truth to the CEO, they wouldn't be promoted.
No, absolutely not.
They'd be fired or, institutionalized. And that tension, that incredibly uncomfortable friction, is really the beating heart of what we are doing today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Thrilled to be here.
Today, we are taking on a monumental piece of literature, a true titan Fyodor Dostoevsky's masterpiece, The Idiot. Now, I want to be entirely clear with you about our mission today.
We've got a big task ahead.
We do. We are not here to give you like a dry plot summary of a massive 19th century Russian novel. We are going to conduct a profound philosophical analysis of this work.
Which is really the only way to read it.
Yeah. We're going to spend real time exploring the brutal, sparks-flying collision between uncompromised radical goodness and a corrupted, cynical world.
And it is a necessary exploration because, to read Dostoevsky is not just to engage with a story. It is an invitation to step into a high-stakes psychological and philosophical laboratory.
A laboratory is a great way to put it.
He didn't write this to tell a polite social tale. He designed it as a rigorous experiment to see if the ultimate spiritual ideal could actually survive the Darwinian reality of human nature.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can even meet the idiot of the story, the protagonist who embodies this pure goodness, we really have to examine the crucible that created him.
Absolutely.
You cannot understand this novel without understanding the utterly traumatized, brilliant mind that forged it. And to do that, we have to go back to a very real, very horrifying moment in Dostoevsky's own life.
We do. We have to look at the mock execution of 1849. This is arguably the defining moment of Dostoevsky's existence and, by extension, his entire epistemology. As a young man, he had been arrested for his involvement in the Petrushevsky Circle.
Which, just to give you some context, wasn't exactly a group of hardened terrorists, right?
Not at all.
They were basically a book club of intellectuals reading banned Western utopian socialist literature, like Charles Fourier, discussing, the emancipation of the serfs.
Precisely. They were discussing social reform in a deeply autocratic, rigid regime under Tsar Nicholas I, and the Tsar wanted to make an example of them.
Wow.
So Dostoevsky was arrested, spent months in solitary confinement in the Peter and Paul fortress, and was ultimately sentenced to death.
Just for talking about books.
Yeah. And this wasn't a theoretical, abstract sentence. On a freezing morning in December, he was literally marched out into the snow of Semyonovsky Square in St. Petersburg. He stood before a firing squad.
That is just unimaginable.
He was tied to a post. The priest offered them the cross to kiss. He listened to the death sentence being read aloud. He heard the soldiers lock and load their rifles.
Oh my God.
He was given, by his own calculation, exactly 5 minutes left to live.
5 minutes. I really want everyone listening to try and wrap your head around that.
It's almost impossible.
You have a lifetime of memories, of ambitions, of relationships, and suddenly it is universally compressed into 5 minutes of existence.
And in those 5 minutes, his mind went into absolute overdrive. He later wrote to his brother about exactly how he divided that time.
He actually budgeted the 5 minutes.
He did.
Yeah.
A couple of minutes to say goodbye to his friends standing next to him, a couple of minutes to make peace with his own soul, and the last minute just to look at the world.
Just to look.
Yeah. He stared at a nearby church with a gilded dome reflecting the winter sunlight. And in that agonizing window, he realized that life, even the most mundane, ordinary, painful life, was infinitely, incomprehensibly precious.
That makes total sense.
He thought to himself, if I do not die, I will turn every minute into a whole age of time. And then, at the absolute last possible second, literally as the commanding officer was about to drop his sword to signal the firing squad, a messenger arrived.
The pardon.
Yes, a prearranged pardon from the Tsar. His sentence was commuted to years of hard labor in a Siberian prison camp.
It's a level of state-sponsored psychological torture that is just unimaginable today.
It really is.
But I have to push back a little here because it's easy to look at an author's trauma and say, aha, this explains everything they ever wrote.
Sure.
Lots of people suffer unimaginable trauma and don't write 1,200-page philosophical masterpieces. Is it really fair to say this one moment defined him completely?
It's a fair question, but I wouldn't call it reductionist.
Yeah.
The trauma didn't magically give him the skill to write. I mean, he was already a talented author.
Right.
But it fundamentally shattered his entire worldview. It acted as an existential lens. Before Siberia, he was interested in broad utopian social theories.
Fixing the system.
Exactly. But after Siberia, and specifically after that moment facing the firing squad, all his superficial concerns about society, politics, and polite reform were just stripped away.
They didn't matter anymore.
Not at all. It birthed his lifelong, almost terrifying obsession with the extremes of human fragility, the terror of mortality, and the value of a single second of consciousness.
Wow.
He realized that when you push a human being to the absolute edge of the abyss, all the societal masks fall off. You see the raw, unvarnished soul.
Which perfectly brings us to a concept from Carl Jung that feels so incredibly relevant here. Jung famously said, "He who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes."
Oh, that's perfect.
And that feels like the exact pivot Dostoevsky made.
It is the perfect encapsulation of his artistic shift.
Yeah.
Dostoevsky stopped looking at the outside, the grand theories of how to fix the societal machine, and he began excavating the inside.
Deep into the human mind.
He started digging into the dark, contradictory depths of the human psyche. He awoke to the reality that the true drama of existence isn't in what we do in polite company.
Right.
It's in the silent, violent wars raging inside our own heads, between guilt, redemption, self-destruction, and profound vulnerability.
And out of that profound vulnerability comes the specific spark that ignited the idiot. It didn't happen in Russia, actually. It happened years later in Switzerland.
Yes, in Geneva.
Dostoevsky and his wife are traveling. They stop in Geneva, and he goes into a museum. He stands in front of a painting by the 16th century artist Hans Holbein the Younger.
A very famous moment in literary history.
The painting is called The Body of the Dead Christ in the Tomb. And the historical record is incredibly specific about how deeply physically disturbed Dostoevsky was by this canvas.
It shook him to his absolute core. To understand why, you kind of have to understand the traditional depiction of Christ in art up to that point.
Right, like the Renaissance stuff.
Exactly. Think of the Renaissance masters. Usually, even in death, Christ is painted with a sort of ethereal, triumphant glow. There is a divine peace on his face, a subtle, unmistakable promise of the resurrection to come.
It's hopeful.
The suffering is sanitized. It's a theological symbol, not a biological reality. But Holbein's painting is radically, uncompromisingly different.
Brutal is the word. It shows a body that has been tortured and is now actively, visibly decaying.
Yes, it is painted with forensic realism. The painting itself is uniquely shaped. It's very long and narrow, creating a deeply claustrophobic feeling.
Like you're in the coffin.
Like you are trapped in the coffin with him. Christ's eyes are half open, staring blankly into nothingness. His mouth is slack. His body is emaciated, covered in livid wounds, and his skin has that undeniable blue-green hue of actual rot.
That is horrifying.
There's absolutely no divine light, no halo, no hint of a soul that is ever going to conquer death. It is the horrific, unyielding reality of a purely physical end.
Here's where it gets really interesting, at least for me. Because looking at that painting, think about being at a magic show.
Okay.
You're watching an illusionist, and you believe the woman is floating, the illusion is flawless, but then you accidentally walk behind the curtain and you see the harsh, greasy mechanical gears, the heavy wires, the sweat on the crew's faces.
The trick is revealed.
Exactly. The illusion is shattered permanently. If this painting shows a Christ who is just a decaying, broken man, completely subjected to the brutal laws of biology, doesn't that threaten the entire foundation of Dostoevsky's faith?
That is exactly the terror that gripped him. His wife, Anna, recorded in her diary that he stood in front of that painting for over 20 minutes, completely transfixed.
20 minutes just staring at it.
He even stood on a chair to get closer to it. She noted that his face took on the exact frightened expression he always got right before an epileptic seizure.
Oh, wow.
And he finally turned to her and said, "A man could lose his faith from looking at that picture."
That gives me chills.
Because if Christ was purely human, if he's subjected to the merciless, crushing forces of nature and human cruelty, and there was no divine intervention to save him from rotting in the ground, then the universe is a very dark, meaningless place indeed.
And that sheer terror, that existential dread, becomes the very DNA of the idiot. Dostoevsky basically asks himself the ultimate what-if question. What if a Christ-like figure, someone with absolute unconditional love, forgiveness, and moral purity, existed purely as a human being on Earth today?
Just a man.
Not a god, just a man. Without divine protection, without miracles to fall back on, would his inner beauty be enough to save the corrupted world around him?
Or would the societal machine just rot him away?
Exactly like the body in Holbein's painting.
It is the ultimate stress test of the Christian ideal against the vicious reality of 19th century society. And to conduct this test, Dostoevsky creates his protagonist, his Russian Christ, and puts him on a cold train headed straight into the heart of the Russian Empire.
Yes, the arrival. We open the narrative on a freezing damp November morning. A train is cutting through the dense fog, heading towards St. Petersburg.
Setting the mood perfectly.
And in a third-class carriage, sitting opposite each other, are two men who are about to collide in a way that will destroy them both. Let's introduce our idiot first. Prince Lev Nikolaevich Myshkin.
Such a fascinating character.
The linguistic choices Dostoevsky makes with this name are just brilliant.
Oh, Dostoevsky was a master of nomenclature. He never named his characters by accident. Lev translates to lion in Russian.
Like the king of the jungle.
Right, it represents his noble aristocratic heritage. He is the last of an ancient line of princes. It hints at a deep, innate spiritual majesty.
But then there's the last name.
His surname, Myshkin, is derived from the Russian word mush, meaning mouse. It points directly to his extreme physical fragility, his timidity, his total lack of social aggression or worldly power.
So he's the lion mouse.
He is a walking paradox, the lion mouse.
He's returning to Russia from a sanatorium in Switzerland. He's wearing a light sleeveless cloak that is completely, absurdly useless in the freezing Russian winter.
He has no idea how to exist in the real world.
He has a tiny bundle of belongings, and he has been away for years being treated for severe epilepsy and what high society loosely and ignorantly termed idiocy.
Right.
He possesses absolute innocence, he has an unconditional compassion that borders on the radical, and he is constitutionally incapable of lying.
Which is a huge problem.
Which, frankly, makes him completely unequipped for the real world. He literally lacks the psychological hardware to manipulate, scheme, or play social games.
Which is precisely why society labels him an idiot. Not because he lacks intelligence. He is actually profoundly observant, deeply articulate, and often the smartest person in the room.
He sees right through people.
He does, but they call him an idiot because he refuses to participate in the transactional, cynical grid that everyone else operates on.
Ah, the grid.
In theology, there's a concept called kenosis, which is the idea of the self-emptying of one's own will and ego to become entirely receptive to divine love.
Okay, I like that. Kenosis?
Myshkin embodies this. He has no ego to defend. But to truly understand Myshkin, we have to look deeply at his illness. His epilepsy isn't just a medical condition added for flavor.
Right, Dostoevsky had it too.
Exactly. Within the philosophical architecture of the novel, it is a crucial metaphysical window.
The way he describes the onset of a seizure in the book, it completely changed how I view consciousness.
Dostoevsky uses his own neurological trauma to explore the extreme duality of human existence. Myshkin describes a fleeting moment, the aura, maybe a second or two before the physical convulsion hits.
What happens in that second?
In that microsecond, he experiences an absolute blinding clarity. He feels an overwhelming harmony with the entire universe, a profound joy where all the contradictions of life instantly make sense.
Like reaching enlightenment.
He describes it as feeling the highest synthesis of life. It is a moment of pure, transcendent, divine revelation where time itself seems to stop.
But it doesn't last.
No. Then, inevitably and violently, comes the plunge, the darkness, the terrible scream, the total loss of reason, the animalistic thrashing, and the humiliating reality of biology taking over.
So his entire existence is a pendulum swinging violently between these two extremes. One second he is experiencing the absolute divine ideal, and the next he is thrown violently into the lowest, most degraded physical reality.
It's tragic.
He is literally the Holbein painting in motion. He is the divine trapped in failing mortal flesh.
Precisely. And because he lives on this terrifying borderline between the eternal and the biological, he sees the world entirely differently than anyone else.
He has a completely different perspective.
He doesn't have the luxury of maintaining the comfortable illusions that normal society clings to for survival. He sees the people around him with a piercing, almost terrifying clarity.
He sees their core.
He looks right past their titles and their wealth and sees their souls. And the first person he turns that clarity on is the man sitting across from him in the train compartment.
Parfen Rogozhin, the ultimate foil. If Myshkin is the fragile spiritual light, Rogozhin is the crushing gravitational dark.
Rogozhin is a force of untamed nature. He's dark-haired, intense, deeply passionate, with a fiery, feverish look in his eyes.
Sounds terrifying, honestly.
He has just inherited a massive multi-million ruble fortune after the death of his tyrannical merchant father. The Russian merchant class at that time was very different from the aristocracy.
How so?
They were often seen as closer to the peasantry, raw, unrefined, deeply religious, but prone to extreme violence and excess.
Okay, that makes sense.
Rogozhin represents the dark, irrational, destructive underbelly of the Russian soul. Where Myshkin is governed entirely by selfless spirit, Rogozhin is governed entirely by possessive instinct and primal desire.
And the setting is so deeply symbolic. You have light and dark trapped in this cramped, freezing, damp train car hurtling through the fog.
The atmosphere is incredibly tense.
And what do they instantly start talking about? A woman. They begin discussing a woman who is going to be the absolute gravitational center of this entire tragedy, Nastasya Filippovna.
Yes.
Rogozhin is completely, violently, obsessively fixated on her. And right here in the opening pages, the seed of the fatal love triangle is planted.
And if we pull back to look at the broader philosophical conflict, the stark contrast in how these two men view this single woman defines the entire novel.
Because they see her so differently.
Exactly. Rogozhin talks about Nastasya with a burning possessive fever. He doesn't just want to love her, he wants to consume her.
It's toxic.
He wants to own her entirely, body and soul, to absorb her into his own darkness, even if it destroys them both in the process. His love is essentially an aggressive act of domination and acquisition.
While Myshkin is the opposite.
But as Myshkin listens to this manic confession, he doesn't feel desire or lust. He feels a pure, selfless, overarching pity. He hears the story of this woman, and through Rogozhin's crude words, Myshkin instantly senses her profound, agonizing suffering.
Which means we really have to dive into that suffering. Because to understand why Myshkin's compassion is so completely triggered by her, to understand the mechanism of the tragedy, we have to understand what Nastasya Filippovna has survived.
It's a dark history.
And her backstory is just relentlessly devastating.
It is a textbook study in exploitation and the systemic abuse of power. She was orphaned at a very young age and taken in by a wealthy, powerful, aristocratic older man named Totsky.
Who sounds like a monster.
He provided for her education, gave her a comfortable estate in the country, and ensured her material needs were met. But as she grew into a breathtakingly beautiful teenager, he weaponized his power over her.
Oh, typical.
He groomed her, abused his authority, and made her his mistress. He completely stole her innocence, kept her isolated from society, and treated her as a private, beautiful object for his own gratification.
She was essentially a prisoner in a gilded cage. But the psychological damage goes so much deeper than just the physical trauma.
Oh, absolutely.
She isn't just a victim who hates her abuser. She has deeply, fundamentally internalized the corruption of the man who ruined her.
That's the real tragedy.
She looks in the mirror and she doesn't see an innocent victim. She sees a fallen, dirty, permanently ruined woman. She genuinely believes she is completely unworthy of any pure, genuine love or redemption.
This is perhaps Dostoevsky's most brilliant psychological insight, anticipating modern trauma theory by decades.
It's so modern.
Nastasya's tragedy isn't merely what was done to her, it is what she continues to do to herself as a result. Her immense, wounded pride has twisted her suffering into a weapon.
She lashes out.
She despises the polite society that whispers about her and looks down on her. She hates the men who look at her with lust. But above all else, she passionately hates herself.
Which is just heartbreaking.
She actively courts scandal, makes scenes, and behaves erratically because it publicly confirms the terrible, shameful image she secretly holds of her own soul.
Which makes the moment Myshkin first meets her so incredibly powerful. He doesn't actually meet her in person right away. He sees a photograph of her at the apartment of the Rogozhin family.
A very crucial scene.
Now let's set the scene for you. This family is trying to set up a marriage. A young, ambitious, status-obsessed man named Ganya wants to marry Nastasya, but absolutely not for love.
Strictly business.
Right. Totsky, the original abuser, is getting older and wants to make a respectable marriage for himself with a general's daughter. But he can't do that with his scandalous mistress hanging around.
He needs to get rid of her.
So Totsky is offering Ganya 75,000 rubles to take Nastasya off his hands. It is an incredibly sleazy, transparent business transaction.
Truly repulsive.
And everyone who looks at this photograph of Nastasya sees either a stunningly beautiful prize or a scandalous, dangerous woman. But Myshkin looks at the photo and sees something entirely different.
He reads her face like an Orthodox icon. He stares at the portrait, deeply affected, and he bypasses all the societal baggage.
He ignores the rumors.
He says, "There's a great deal of suffering in this face." He sees the agonizing, defensive pride that is masking a deep, profound, existential torment.
He sees right to the core of her trauma.
He doesn't judge her for the rumors, and he isn't blinded by her extraordinary physical beauty. He sees the wounded, terrified human soul underneath.
And for her, that must be wild.
And that recognition, the experience of being seen truly, with divine empathy and without a shred of judgment or lust, is something Nastasya has never experienced in her entire life.
And this all builds up like a pressure cooker to what has to be one of the most intense, theatrical, and nerve-wracking scenes in all of literature. Nastasya's 25th birthday party.
Oh, this scene is incredible.
This is the climax of the first part of the novel, and it is essentially a high society auction of a human soul.
It is a brilliant, terrifying set piece. Nastasya has invited all the men who have played a role in her exploitation, as well as those actively trying to buy her.
Setting the trap.
She sets herself up as the prize, fully intending to humiliate them and herself. Ganya is there, sweating, nervously waiting to see if he will get his 75,000 rubles and his bride, which will secure his place in society.
The tension must be thick.
The atmosphere in the room is suffocatingly thick with greed, humiliation, malice, and repressed violence.
And then the door bursts open, and Rogozhin crashes the party with a gang of drunken followers.
Just absolute chaos.
And he isn't playing the polite society game of disguised transactions. He walks in, completely deranged with passion, and lays down 100,000 rubles wrapped in newspaper, bidding on her like she is a piece of livestock.
And to give the listener context, 100,000 rubles in 1860s Russia is an astronomical, mind-boggling amount of money.
How much are we talking?
An average worker might make a few hundred rubles a year. Rogozhin is throwing down the equivalent of millions of dollars in raw cash.
Just casually on the table.
The tension is unbelievable. Everyone in the room is bidding with dirty money, calculating their social standing, their honor, their bank accounts.
And then out of nowhere, the penniless, awkward idiot, Prince Myshkin, steps forward. He intervenes.
The absolute last person you'd expect.
He offers to marry her himself. But he offers no conditions, no financial transaction. He simply looks at her and says he recognizes her inner purity, that she is not to blame for what Totsky did to her, and that he will honor her and respect her for the rest of his life.
It is the ultimate, unadulterated offer of grace. In a room entirely populated by predators, pragmatists, and cowards, Myshkin offers unconditional salvation.
He offers a real way out.
He offers to restore her dignity and wipe her slate clean. And for a suspended moment, the entire room is stunned into absolute silence. The reality of his absolute transparent goodness acts like a monkey wrench thrown into the gears of their corrupt society.
They literally cannot process it.
Not at all.
It's an incredible moment. It's like being at a high-stakes art auction where everyone is bidding millions in blood money, and suddenly someone walks up and tries to pay with a piece of their own untainted soul.
That's a great analogy.
It completely shatters the rules of the game. But here's the thing that is so hard for a modern reader to swallow. Nastasya is moved, she's weeping. She clearly sees the lifeline Myshkin is throwing her.
She understands what he's offering.
And yet she rejects him. She turns him down. Now, I have to ask, isn't Dostoevsky being incredibly cruel to her character here? Why on earth does she reject Myshkin if he is the only one in the room, maybe the only one in the entire world, offering her a genuine way out of her trauma.
It seems cruel on the surface, but it is actually profoundly realistic. To answer why she rejects him, we have to look deeply at the psychology of self-loathing.
Okay, break that down for me.
Nastasya rejects the lifeline precisely because she believes it is too pure for her. She looks at Myshkin's absolute radiant goodness, and she is terrified of it.
She doesn't think she's worthy.
Exactly. She truly believes that if she marries him, her dirt, her ruined reputation, and her chaotic, damaged nature will inevitably drag him down, taint his purity, and ruin his life.
Wait, so she rejects him out of a twisted sense of altruism. She's trying to protect him from herself.
Partially, yes. She does want to protect him, but there's a much darker, more selfish current running beneath it.
Of course there is.
In a stunning display of theatrical defiance, she takes Rogozhin's 100,000 rubles and throws the entire fortune into the roaring fireplace.
Literal millions of dollars just up in smoke.
She tells Ganya, the ambitious coward, that he can have the money if he's willing to reach his bare hands into the flames to get it, perfectly exposing his pathetic greed to the whole room.
That is so intense.
But after all this grand defiance, after humiliating everyone who tried to buy her, what does she do? She runs off into the cold night with Rogozhin.
The man who literally just treated her like property.
Exactly. And she chooses Rogozhin because his dark, destructive, punishing love perfectly matches the hatred she feels for herself.
It's familiar to her.
Rogozhin's darkness is familiar, comfortable territory to her. It aligns with her core belief that she deserves to be destroyed. Myshkin's light, on the other hand, is terrifying because it requires a total transformation of her identity.
She'd have to change.
Accepting his love requires her to forgive herself, which is the one thing her immense pride will not allow her to do. So she actively, consciously chooses the abyss over unmerited salvation.
That is just bone-chilling. To think about a time in your own life or someone you know who actively sabotaged a healthy, loving relationship because they secretly felt they didn't deserve it.
It happens all the time.
And they went back to a toxic situation because it felt normal. Dostoevsky is capturing that exact human flaw just on a catastrophic operatic scale.
He really is.
And this choice sets up the central tragedy of the rest of the book. Because Myshkin's attempt to save Nastasya introduces what I think is the most controversial philosophical premise Dostoevsky is throwing at us.
Which is?
The idea that pure goodness, if it completely lacks practical wisdom and boundaries, can actually cause profound, devastating harm.
It is a very bitter pill to swallow, especially for a Western audience raised on the idea that love conquers all.
Right, we love that narrative.
We desperately want to believe that unconditional empathy is the ultimate solution to the world's problems. But Dostoevsky, acting as the ruthless scientist, is putting that naive belief under a microscope.
Testing the limits.
Myshkin goes out into St. Petersburg high society. He interacts with families like the Epanchins, who represent the very pinnacle of the Russian aristocracy and the rigid table of ranks. And he completely, utterly bewilders them.
He really does. He doesn't know how to do small talk. He goes into a fancy gilded drawing room, surrounded by ladies in corsets and generals with medals. And what does he talk about?
It's definitely not the weather.
He doesn't talk about the weather or court gossip. He tells them harrowing, vivid, hyper-specific stories about executions.
Which is so awkward.
He tells them about a man standing on a scaffold facing the French guillotine, describing the exact moment the blade falls. He tells them about a man standing on a cliff with exactly 5 minutes to live, clearly, Dostoevsky injecting his own trauma directly into his character's mouth.
And crucially, he also tells them the story of Marie. This is a vital narrative within the novel that acts as a microcosm for the entire book.
Remind me about Marie.
Marie was a marginalized, impoverished young girl in the Swiss village where Myshkin was staying. She had been seduced by a passing merchant and then abandoned.
A tale as old as time.
And the entire village, acting on their rigid moral codes, completely ostracized her. The local pastor condemned her. The adults judged her.
They cast her out.
And they taught the local children to literally throw stones at her and taunt her as she was dying of consumption. She was the absolute village pariah.
And what did Myshkin do? He didn't just feel a passive sense of pity. He actively went to her.
He acted on his compassion.
He kissed her hand. He showed her basic, profound human dignity. And more importantly, he worked to change the village. He didn't use force or authority or preach angry sermons.
He just led by example.
He just used his own transparent, gentle goodness to dissolve the cruelty of the children. He slowly taught them to love her, to bring her food, to sit by her window, and to treat her like a worthy human being in the months before she died.
The aristocratic society in the drawing room listens to these stories, and they are temporarily mesmerized. They are captivated by his complete lack of pretense and his childlike earnestness.
It's refreshing for them.
But they also fundamentally, fatally misunderstand him. They classify his extreme, boundaryless empathy as idiocy.
They miss the point completely.
You think it's a quaint, amusing defect of his damaged brain. They do not realize it is a radical, demanding, and highly disruptive moral stance.
And this radical empathy is about to get him in massive trouble. Because the love triangle we started with, Myshkin, Rogozhin, Nastasya, is about to expand into a square.
Enter Aglaya Epanchin.
Enter Aglaya, the youngest daughter of the aristocratic family. She is the total structural opposite of Nastasya. She is young, breathtakingly beautiful, proud, sheltered, innocent, and completely unblemished by the cruelty of the world.
She represents pure beauty, whereas Nastasya represents defiled beauty.
Exactly.
Aglaya is fascinated by Myshkin. She sees through his awkwardness to his deep nobility and truthfulness. She is drawn to his light.
But there's a catch.
But Aglaya is also a product of her society and her youth. She demands a traditional, romantic, exclusive, possessive kind of love.
Like a fairy tale romance.
She wants a knight in shining armor. She wants a man who will choose her above all others, who will duel for her honor, who will aggressively claim her. She wants Eros romantic love.
But Myshkin isn't wired for Eros. He is wired for agape, unconditional, universal, spiritual love.
That's the conflict right there.
And this brings us to the fatal flaw of his character within a societal context, his total inability to differentiate between romantic love and spiritual pity. He does love Aglaya, he loves her light, her innocence, and he genuinely wants to marry her and be happy.
But Nastasya is still in the picture.
But he is still irrevocably, almost supernaturally tied to Nastasya by this agonizing, crushing sense of duty and compassion. Every single time he hears Nastasya is in trouble or spiraling towards self-destruction with Rogozhin, he literally abandons his own happiness and runs after her to try and save her.
Literary critics often point to a profoundly important philosophical concept explored here. Within the text, one of the characters argues that compassion is the most important and perhaps the only law of existence for the entire human race.
Which sounds beautiful on paper.
Dostoevsky himself firmly believed in the power of compassion. But through the tragedy of Myshkin, he pushes the concept to its absolute limit to ask a terrifying question: what happens when compassion has absolutely no boundaries?
What happens when empathy lacks the structure of practical wisdom?
Chaos happens. Absolute destructive chaos.
Just a mess.
Yes, because Myshkin cannot choose. He cannot bear to inflict pain on either woman. He cannot say no to Nastasya's immense suffering, and he cannot say no to Aglaya's pure love.
He's stuck.
He's entirely paralyzed by his own boundless goodness.
Which leads to the great confrontation, the brutal, inevitable face-off between Aglaya, the pure beauty, and Nastasya, the broken beauty. They finally meet in the same room.
A clash of psychological titans.
Aglaya is furious, demanding that Myshkin finally act like a conventional man, make a definitive choice, and banish the scandalous Nastasya from his life forever.
She wants him to claim her.
Nastasya, meanwhile, is daring him to save her, testing his loyalty, her immense pride wounded to the core by Aglaya's insults. They are verbally tearing each other apart, and they both turn to Myshkin and demand choose.
And what does the prince do? He hesitates. He looks at Nastasya. He sees the agonizing, unbearable suffering etched into her face. He sees the terrifying vulnerability she is trying to hide with anger, and he cannot abandon her.
His pity takes over.
His overwhelming pity paralyzes his romantic love. He turns to Aglaya with a look of reproach, essentially asking her how she could be so cruel to a woman who has already suffered so much.
Oh, Aglaya must have hated that.
And in that brief moment of hesitation, in that failure to definitively and aggressively choose her, Aglaya's immense pride is mortally wounded. She realizes with crushing clarity that he pities Nastasya more than he loves her.
And she leaves.
She runs out of the room, driven away from him forever.
So we have to pause here because this is where the debate gets really heated. I keep thinking about this like a lifeguard analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine a lifeguard swims out into the ocean to save someone who is drowning. But the drowning person is panicking, thrashing around, fighting the rescue, trying to pull the lifeguard under.
Right, a very dangerous situation.
And because the lifeguard is so singularly, obsessively focused on saving this one chaotic, self-destructive person, they accidentally let a perfectly capable swimmer right next to them get pulled under by the riptide. Is Dostoevsky genuinely saying that being too empathetic is actually a fatal character flaw?
Let me refine that analogy slightly because it's close, but it misses Myshkin's specific tragedy. Imagine the lifeguard doesn't even know how to swim or completely refuses to acknowledge that drowning people panic and fight back.
Okay.
Yet he throws himself into the violent waves anyway out of pure, overwhelming pity. Dostoevsky is absolutely demonstrating that goodness without boundaries is a form of dangerous foolishness.
It's almost arrogant in a way.
Compassion without wisdom, without the ability to navigate the ugly realities of human nature, becomes inherently destructive.
So by trying to save everyone, he saves no one.
By trying to be the savior of absolutely everyone, by refusing to assert his own ego or make a definitive, painful choice, Myshkin effectively ruins the lives of both women, and he ruins himself.
He lacks the practical wisdom to see that you cannot save someone who insists on drowning.
And you certainly shouldn't drag innocent bystanders down in the attempt.
And because he couldn't wield his goodness with that necessary wisdom, the dark forces he was trying to hold back finally break loose. The dam bursts.
It's all downhill from here.
The final arc of this novel is just a terrifying, inexorable descent into horror.
It is the inevitable victory of raw, unredeemed human instinct over the fragile spiritual ideal. Nastasya, having driven Aglaya away, agrees to marry Myshkin.
But she's terrified, right?
As the wedding day approaches, the more terrified she becomes. The prospect of actually living with his radiant purity, of facing her own perceived unworthiness reflected in his eyes every single day, is psychologically intolerable to her.
So in a move of ultimate final self-destruction right before the wedding, literally as the crowd is gathered at the church doors, she runs away again.
History repeating itself.
And she runs straight back to Rogozhin. She knows exactly what she is doing. She knows what he is capable of. She is essentially running toward her own execution.
She is. And Rogozhin at this point has been pushed far beyond the limits of his sanity. He is completely consumed by a demonic, jealous, possessive obsession.
He snapped.
He has chased her, bought her, loved her, and been humiliated and rejected by her too many times. He finally realizes the dark, unalterable truth. He can never truly own her soul.
She will always be out of his reach.
She will always remain fundamentally out of his reach, either running back to Myshkin's light or torturing herself. And so his primal instinct to possess finally morphs into the instinct to destroy. If he cannot have her, no one will.
The murder scene. It happens in Rogozhin's dark, gloomy, oppressive house in St. Petersburg, a house that Dostoevsky goes out of his way to describe as feeling like a tomb.
The atmosphere is just suffocating.
Rogozhin murders her with a knife. It's not a crime of passion in the heat of a streaming argument. It is the bleak, silent, inevitable conclusion to his possessive love.
And the scene that follows is widely considered by literary critics to be one of the most heartbreaking, chilling, and profoundly unsettling scenes in all of world literature.
It's hard to even read.
Myshkin, frantically searching the city for Nastasya, finally arrives at Rogozhin's house.
And what he finds, it defies every expectation of how a hero or a man or a human being should react. He enters the dark room. He finds Rogozhin. And he finds the body of the woman he has sacrificed everything to save.
Covered by a white sheet.
She is covered by a white sheet, surrounded by jars of Zhendov fluid, a strong chemical disinfectant placed there by Rogozhin to mask the smell of decay.
Just like the painting.
It is a direct, horrifying echo of the Holbein painting. Biology and death asserting their absolute dominance over beauty and spirit. But instead of flying into a rage, instead of attacking the murderer or calling for justice, what does the pure-hearted prince do?
He sits down beside the murderer. They spend the entire night together, keeping a silent, terrifying vigil over the corpse of the woman they both loved.
Which is just mind-blowing.
Myshkin doesn't condemn Rogozhin. His absolute compassion overrides even the basic human instinct for justice or vengeance.
He just pities him.
He sees that Rogozhin's soul is entirely, irreversibly broken by what he has done. So the pure man comforts the murderer. He gently strokes Rogozhin's hair as Rogozhin babbles in a feverish delirium.
Both of them just sitting there in the dark.
They are united in the dark, both utterly, completely psychologically destroyed by the elemental forces they couldn't control.
It gives me a visceral reaction just thinking about it. Two men sitting in the sweltering dark with a dead body, one ruined by uncontrollable passion, the other ruined by boundless pity.
The profound symbolism of this scene cannot be overstated. The instinctual, primal passion of Rogozhin has successfully killed the beauty of Nastasya.
And Myshkin.
And the absolute, unconditional compassion of Myshkin has entirely, spectacularly failed to save anyone. The ideal, the Russian Christ, has been crushed under the sheer, unyielding weight of worldly reality.
That experiment failed.
The grand philosophical experiment has failed.
And the aftermath is an absolute wasteland. Rogozhin confesses to the murder and is sent away to a penal colony in Siberia, his mind completely broken by the weight of his crime.
Just like Dostoevsky's own exile.
Yeah. Aglaya, fleeing the wreckage of her heart and her family's humiliation, marries a man she thinks is a Polish revolutionary hero, discovering too late that he is a fraud, and she lives out her days in unhappy, bitter exile.
And Myshkin, the mind that housed all that extraordinary light, all that forgiveness, all that transcendent vision, completely collapses.
The epilepsy takes over entirely.
The sheer strain of the tragedy triggers a final, irreversible mental breakdown. He is sent back to the sanatorium in Switzerland. But this time, there is no hope of recovery.
He's just gone.
He is devoid of thought, devoid of hope, devoid of identity. He is reduced to a hollow, babbling shell of a human being. The man society cruelly called an idiot has truly, tragically lost his mind forever.
The darkness, biology, and the world won.
They did.
Which means, as we approach the end of this deep dive, we need to perform a philosophical autopsy. We need to step back from the ruins of this story and ask, what was Dostoevsky actually trying to prove about the human condition with this brutal 1,200-page experiment?
It's the big question.
Let's talk about the failure of the ideal. There is a very famous quote from this novel, one that gets slapped on coffee mugs and inspirational posters, totally taken out of context. Beauty will save the world.
Yes, people love to quote that as an uplifting, optimistic slogan. But within the dark context of the novel, it is a desperate, naive hope that is proven violently, undeniably wrong.
It totally failed.
Did beauty save the world in this story? Absolutely not. The text makes it undeniably clear the exact opposite happened. The world destroyed the beauty.
It took the beauty, both Nastasya's incredible physical beauty and Myshkin's radiant spiritual beauty, and it ground them both into dust.
Exactly.
So I have to ask you, is the novel just a giant, bitter, nihilistic message? Is Dostoevsky saying that unconditional purity cannot survive here? That if you try to live without ego, without pride, without material ambition, the world will just chew you up and spit you out?
That is certainly a major part of the indictment, but we also have to look at who is really at fault here. Was Myshkin actually the idiot?
Or is society the true idiot?
Exactly. The grid of human society runs on manipulation, self-interest, protecting one's honor, and establishing rigid boundaries.
And Myshkin didn't fit the grid.
Myshkin didn't fail because he was weak. He failed because he was completely, fundamentally incompatible with that grid. Society could not accommodate radical honesty and pure love.
They didn't know what to do with him.
They literally didn't have the psychological or spiritual vocabulary for it, so their natural reaction was to isolate it, mock it, and ultimately destroy it.
But wait, it's not just society's fault, right? There's also the internal, deeply flawed human element. What about Nastasya? She had the lifeline. Myshkin offered her a way out of the societal grid.
Exactly. And this brings up perhaps the most vital, lasting philosophical point of the entire work. It is the terrifying realization that human beings frequently, consciously reject peace in order to dive headfirst into torment.
Self-sabotage.
Nastasya is the ultimate proof of this dark psychological truth. We often cling to our trauma. We cling to our pain because it is familiar. It provides a twisted sense of identity.
It's the idea that we'd rather be comfortably miserable than risk the terrifying, demanding unknown of being truly happy and healed.
Precisely. Nastasya rejected salvation because accepting it would require her to entirely change her identity, to let go of her defining narrative of being a ruined, victimized woman.
Which is so hard to do.
Decades before Freud wrote about the death drive, Dostoevsky is warning us that human beings are not always rational actors seeking their own best interest.
We actively destroy ourselves.
They are often driven by a perverse desire for our own destruction, a subconscious urge to punish ourselves. And pure goodness, like Myshkin's, is completely powerless against the soul that has actively chosen its own damnation.
Wow. Okay, let's try to wrap our heads around this incredible journey. Dostoevsky took the horrific, mind-altering trauma of his own near execution in the freezing snow. He took his terrifying existential doubts sparked by a painting of a rotting Christ, and he forged them into a terrifying, beautiful, unyielding mirror for humanity.
A perfect summary.
The Idiot teaches us a hard, unforgiving lesson. Pure, boundaryless compassion in a flawed world isn't a superpower, it is a recipe for tragedy.
It is. It teaches us that truly saving someone requires far more than just loving them unconditionally.
It takes work.
It requires immense practical wisdom, it requires the firm establishment of boundaries, and most importantly, it requires the other person's actual willingness to participate in their own salvation.
Otherwise, you both go down.
Without those things, your compassion will only drag you into the abyss alongside them.
It is a heavy, heavy realization. We spend our whole lives, or at least we are told to spend our whole lives, trying to be good people, trying to be selfless, empathetic, forgiving, and endlessly accommodating.
Right, that's the goal we're given.
But if Dostoevsky is right, if absolute goodness is fundamentally incompatible with the survival of the human world, then what exactly is the right amount of correction we must hold on to just to survive? Is a little bit of selfishness, a little bit of protective cynicism, actually a moral necessity? Keep that in mind next time you find yourself trying to save someone who might just be trying to pull you under.